Hey everyone, it's Richard here. We're going to take a break from live episodes for the next few weeks because I'm going to be out exploring the world myself. In the meantime, we'll be revisiting some of my favorite episodes from the archives. And although these are older episodes, I think the stories and insights are just as inspiring today as when they first aired. So I hope you enjoy the rerun as much as I did, and we'll be back with a brand new episode very soon. Bye-bye.
I love hearing about big journeys to places I don't know much about. So you can't imagine how excited I am today to talk to today's guest, Mike Keane. Mike is in the final stages of planning a 2,600 kilometer sea kayak expedition up the coast of Greenland. And I'm eager to hear more about this incredible trip. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. And I'm excited because we're going to talk a bit about your trip, but also there's something else about what you're doing, which I'm actually really interested in. I've been doing a lot of research the last probably year. But let's start first with about the trip because it just seems incredible. It's a 2,600 kilometer sea kayak expedition. You're going up the coast of Greenland. Why? What's the impetus to take on this incredible adventure?
There's quite a few reasons. The first one, funny enough, to kick it off was both the names, the start and the finish names, Kakortok and Karnak. Loads of Q's in them. And I thought, oh, wow, that'd be awesome to have that as a start and a finish. So that's what kicked it off. I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if we went all the way from Kakortok to Karnak? It's like 5 Q's in there. And then I was thinking, yeah, I've spent the last 3 summers in Greenland. So I've done a fair bit of kayaking out there. Yeah, before that, I was pretty much a kayak novice. But it's quite a steep learning curve over there with the quite changeable weather, icebergs spinning over without any notice, and like giving you some mild tsunamis filled with ice. Had a couple of hairy moments, but I think I'm quite I've got quite a safe head on my shoulders, so I give them all the respect they deserve. And it's also the important thing behind it is climate change, obviously happening everywhere, but no more so obvious as it is in the Arctic and in Greenland. You know, even over the last 3 years that I've been there, the glaciers in the south anyway that I've seen and walked up to, it's another 100, 200 meters to get to the face of the glacier now in just the time I've been there, which is really scary. And, you know, I know all the arguments that, temperatures fluctuate over millions of years anyway, but it does definitely seem to be on a rapid acceleration at the moment. And also there's a couple of scientific reasons behind it that I'm doing the kayak trip with as well. One of them being microplastics. So there are microplastics everywhere now. Every other day in the papers, there's something about microplastics being present in blood, in transfusions, in fetuses, everywhere. In fertilizers, in the water table. So I've linked up with 2 or 3 scientific organisations and the British Antarctic Survey, and I'll be taking samples of poo, for want of a better word, from fish and sea mammals, mostly sea mammals. So seal, walrus, polar bear, if I can get close enough, all the way up the coast. So I'll be logging it meticulously with the coordinates and where I found it, and pictures and my diary journal as well. And they'll be sent back to Cambridge via Nuke, and they'll be analysed for microplastics. So they'll be using that to determine how much microplastic pollution is in each part of the coast, because it doesn't just come in from bottles or actual physical plastic that's in the sea. It comes in through the rain as well and brought on the currents. So it's quite important for the scientists to check how much the glacial runoff is full of microplastics as well, because that could indicate how much is coming down through the sky through rainfall as well. So that's going to be quite an interesting one. But the other side, because I'm a chef by trade, I've been a chef for many, many years, and I got into fermentation about 15 years ago. The more I looked into the whole fermentation thing, it seemed to highlight how crazy the global food system is, for me anyway. Yeah, as a Western trained chef, and I've worked in the States, in Canada, I've worked in New Zealand on the cruise ships, all over the place. And the overriding kind of control authority is everything's based around the fridge. If anything's a day past its sell by date or it's out of temperature, just throw it away all the time. And I got to thinking that after after not an altercation, but an interesting discussion with an environmental health officer when I was trying to make salami here in England. And they just didn't have any procedures in place for salami because it's made at 9 or 10 degrees centigrade. So that's not fridge temperature. So no, it's not possible. You can't do it. And I just wasn't allowed to make it. Despite me pointing out, the Italians and Spanish have been doing it for thousands of years safely. What's different about us? So I looked into it a bit more, and like it was only 2 generations ago in England anyway that fridges weren't common. So I got to thinking, what the hell were our grandparents and great grandparents doing there? And it's pretty much fermentation or just allowing food to overrun, whereas now we throw it away. Back then it was fine. It just turned into something different. And then I was looking into more extreme examples of fermentation, and it turns out that Greenland has got some awesome ones. They've got this thing called kayak right in the far north, and I was there 2 years ago. It's called kayak, and in about April-May time, they get up on the mountainsides with these huge great nets, and they catch hundreds of little orc seabirds, which little black and white, maybe 6 or 7 inches long, and then they take 400 or 500 of these seabirds and stuff them inside a seal that they've shot, and then they'll sew up the big cavity. So all these birds are packed in it, push all the air out, and then they'll hide it under rocks or just stick it under rocks or underground for about 6 months, and they ferment. 6 months later, you open up the seal, and you've got this wet rag of a bird. And you bite the head off, and you drink the liquefied insides through the neck, and then you just pull the feathers off, which just flake off, and the meat is like a pate. It's we'd call it rotten, but it's and they've got no trees there, so they haven't got a history or a culture of fermenting or preserving with salt either. So it's literally just a bird inside a seal that's been left. Same as a road, kind of roadkill over here, I guess. So I got to thinking, where is that kind of line between fermentation and putrid? At what point does it become safe or meat? It's incredible. And if you look back through the polar records of Arctic explorers, when they've had to overwinter, when the boats have been crushed by pack ice or they just can't move, and they've had to eat what the Inuit were eating, half the time they started to starve because they just refused. They had these caribou pits where in a good year or a good hunt, they'll pack these pits with caribou, and they'll go back to it in another year when things aren't so rosy. But in the meantime, they've got maggots in. They've almost collapsed because they're just rotten, in our words. But again, it's like a paste full of maggots, and you can eat it, but it keeps you alive. It's almost a delicacy for the Inuit. Whereas these Arctic explorers, these stuck-up English and European guys, we're going, it can't possibly be eaten. It's ridiculous. But when they realise there's nothing else, you eat that. So how is that possible when we're so fastidious about sell-by dates and temperatures here, and everything's got to be ticked and checked? How come it's totally the opposite over there? So I've got an amazing team of microbiologists from Stanford University. I've got another 2 or 3 universities in the States, Nuuk University, Cork, and South Bank University here in London. They're all microbiologists, but all got a slightly different take on the gut microbiome and the effect that bacteria on food has, and how it survives through the gut. So I'll be taking samples of my gut bacteria via the medium of poo, and sending that back to Nuuk University, and they'll be interestingly rifling through it and then analysing it for the bacteria. With those samples, I'll also be sending back the food that I'm eating at the time. And so it's just an Inuit diet that I'll be eating. So 100% fish or sea mammal. And that, at the time I'll be going, there won't be any mushrooms. There'll be very little in the way of greenery, maybe a bit of seaweed, possibly seabirds and sea eggs. So it's going to be kind of a groundbreaking piece of research, I think, to just once and for all to get a fix on how is it possible that these extreme foods, how is it possible that we can eat them and not get sick?
Yeah, this sounds super, super interesting. And I've actually had some issues with my gut biome. I had chronic fatigue, and it was related to getting I had a really serious blood infection, and I had a whole bunch of antibiotics. And it just eventually, after about 9 months, they said, we probably just destroyed your gut biome to save your life. And since then, actually, even just in the last 6 months, I really made a commitment to eating more fermented foods and eating more whole foods and get rid of processed foods. I seen to my wife actually last night, my energy, I feel like I'm 20 years younger. And really all I've done is eat more natural foods and eat kimchi every day, a little bowl of kimchi, and get rid of all processed foods. And it's, you mentioned how we ate hundreds of years ago. I think there's something in it, at least with myself. I don't think this is just something I'm thinking, because energy isn't something I think you can fake. But I'm eager to find out what you find out with even more kind of aggressively fermented foods, because, kimchi is still edible. Some of the things you described are going to push the boundaries for a lot of people not used to it.
The more you look into it, the more you think it's just common sense. That humans have evolved over millions of years, and we've pretty much been eating the same diet of this fermented natural stuff without all these commercial fridges and the fossil fueled logistics system that we have now. And we evolved so slowly. Our lifespan's 70 to 100 years old. So any adaptation through evolution is going to take generations, and we've like that almost in 200 or 300 years, have totally changed our whole diet. So it's gone from eating what we found in our environment, which was what we had to do because we didn't have transport or planes flying everywhere, to flying stuff in from all over the world at seasons where it wouldn't naturally be available in our environment. So it just totally makes sense to me now. As you grow up and you're bombarded with all these adverts of processed food, basically, and it comes back down to pretty much capitalism and trying to make money out of it. I think that's one of the contributing factors to why our health and allergies and stuff are so messed up lately. Allergies and intolerances are through the roof. Even when I started out as a chef 30 or so years ago, it was rare to get someone saying, can we have something gluten-free or dairy-free? Whereas now, it's got to be at least half of the inquiries coming in through a professional kitchen will be, can we have this? Can we have it without that? Because I'm intolerant, which is crazy. And another part of it, I've got an anthropologist from the University of Michigan, Professor John Smith, and he has been looking into indigenous tribes and how they've eaten over the last few thousand years, and not just the Inuit, a great example for the Arctic, but also in tropical regions where there's indigenous tribes who, rather than if they have a fresh kill, rather than eat the meat straight, which we'd have a fillet steak or a sirloin steak, they let it rot first. So they'll bury it in the ground for 5 or 6 days in the tropical humidity and the heat until it starts to rot and it's maybe got some maggots in, and it's soft and it's gone stinky from our perspective. But what that's doing is the enzymes are eating into it and they're pre-digesting it, making it easier and more bioavailable to our own gut to eat and to transform into energy. So I've got him on board as well, which is great. And one of his things is that disgust is a learned reflex. It's not inherent. It's not genetical or anything. When we go, oh my God, that's disgusting, that's only because we've been conditioned to it over the years as we've grown up. I guess it's similar to when you're a kid, you hate blue cheese or wine or anything that's strong like that. It's, oh my God, how can you possibly eat that? But as you grow older and you're kind of more exposed to it, you love that stuff. It's one of the luxuries. So that's how we can kind of condition ourselves to love these extreme fermented foods, just by being exposed to it.
I think this is so cool, just the ideas that you're tossing around. But I want to go back to one of the first things you said, that you were a novice sea kayaker up until a few years ago, and you've spent the last few summers in Greenland. What was the transition from you do a bit of sea kayaking to spending every summer in Greenland to now going and doing this epic, journey?
Yeah, 3 years ago is when I first went out, and I had a book contract to a publisher paid for me to go out, and they sent a photographer out, and I was writing a recipe book, and then I was out there during COVID when it first hit, and it changed everything, and they dropped the book. But I was out there, so I had their money. Thanks very much. And before I went out there, I thought, I can't go out there and not sea kayak. I'd never been sea kayaking before. So I paid for a 2-day course here in England, and then went out there. Actually, the first couple of times were with a guide, up in Ilulissat, which is where all the big icebergs are. But after that, I was just by myself going out on the sea kayak. And it's unbelievable. There's icebergs everywhere up the coast in Greenland. It's not just in the north or anywhere. The ice cap stretches from north to south, and there's loads of icebergs that come around the bottom from the east on the currents and then go up the west coast. So wherever you go, you're guaranteed to see these unbelievable icebergs, and I can't get enough of them. Every time I go past an iceberg, I'm stopping to take photos because they're just absolutely incredible. Everyone's different; they've got different colours and shapes, and they move differently. And sometimes when you're kayaking, even like 200 or 300 meters away, you'll hear this enormous boom or a crack. It sounds like they're mining in the next valley or something. That's what I thought it was before, but it wasn't. It's the icebergs. And it's absolutely terrifying. You're paddling away and you hear this. It actually hurts your ears because it's so loud. And you're convinced that a tsunami is right behind you or something. And you look around and you can't see anything, but suddenly an iceberg's flipped over or it's split in half. So that was the real kind of draw for me, was the spectacular landscape. But also, you're pretty much guaranteed every trip to see a whale or seals. You just be paddling along, and then like 40 or 50 seal will just come up in front of you. The head's popping up like that whack-a-monkey game. They're just like popping up like that. And then when you see a whale and it's only 20 meters off your bow or something, it's both terrifying and unbelievably mesmerizing at the same time.
And so what's a typical day going to be like while you're on this journey?
I kind of round it up to 3,000 kilometers. If I work on 3,000 kilometers, to do it in 100 days, I've got to do 30 kilometers a day, which is very doable. I think I usually do that in about 5 or 6 hours. So I will be aiming for at least 5 or 6 hours kayaking every day. If it's a nice clear day and it's nice and calm, I'll try and go for 10 or 12 hours, just kind of putting them away for when it's stormy or rainy or windy and I can't get out. So I'll be wild camping most of the way. There's settlements all up the coast, loads of tiny settlements. Pretty much hunters are everywhere up there as well. So they'll be out shooting seal, occasional whale, walrus as well in the far north. I'll have a fishing rod, so I'll be fishing either from the kayak or when I've stopped or before I set off for the day. That's pretty much going to be it. So set up camp. I've got a polar bear perimeter tripwire thing I'll set up around the tent, as well as a rifle and various bear flares and flare pistols. Set up camp, cook away from the tent, because if the polar bear comes, it'll be aiming for the food first. So I'm going to cook a good 30 or 40 meters away from the tent, and then sleep. And then obviously as you're going towards June, in June around Midsummer's Day, I'll be up well inside the Arctic Circle, so it'll be full sunlight. As well, so it's going to be light the whole time. So if it is a good day and I'm feeling strong, I'll just keep going as far as I can.
That sounds like an incredible journey. I'm a novice sea kayaker. I've done it in Canada's Clayoquot Sound, but I remember reading Paddling North by Audrey Sutherland, and she talked about the weather, paddling up all the inside passage in Alaska, but also the tides and dealing with that. And is that something you're going to have to, I remember she'd have to wake up at 2 a.m. because that's the only time the tide was going to be suitable for making a crossing. Is that something you have to be paying attention to, is all these, difficult aspects like that?
Yeah, it depends where you are. You can only do so much research from England as well. So a lot of it's going to have to be, tapping into local knowledge when I'm there. I'm learning Danish at the moment, which is, one of the official languages of Greenland. Greenlandic is way too difficult to learn in the few months that I've got. So hopefully I'll better communicate. But the tidal races and stuff are an issue. There's not a lot of kind of narrow fjords and stuff which I'll be in. It'll be mostly kind of coastal sea, but I will use there's loads of islands up there, so I'll be using those as a barrier for the big swells coming in from the west. But it's the tides will be a slight issue. I haven't had an issue before when I've been kayaking, to be fair, and I've gone out all times of day. There's like a 3 meter difference on the tides, so it's a big volume of water coming through. So there will be a couple of issues when it narrows and I'm going out through, but I'm hoping to just check the locals to see which way if they've got any hints or tips about when to go, when not to go. But otherwise, I'm quite teched up. I've got I've got a sat phone. I've got a great tracker, plus a Greenlandic phone, and they've got really good connectivity up there as well. So it's not like I'm flying blind.
Now, one thing you mentioned, which surprised me, again, I've never been to Greenland, but you say there's little settlements all the way up the coast. So is this something that, every couple of days there'll be a little settlement that if you had an emergency you could pull into? Are they that common that, you could see people if you needed to?
Yeah, pretty much. There's only the distance between the north and the south is the same as it is from north of Denmark down to Morocco. So it's the whole of Europe. So it's a big stretch. And there's only 57,000 people who live there. But they all live on the coast, and most of them live on the west coast. The capital, Nuuk's, only got 17,500 people, and that's the capital city. The settlements, they're of 200 or 300 people all the way up the coast. There's not so many in the north. Most of it's down in kind of the bottom half, the bottom 2/3, but there will be one every couple of days. There will be a settlement. Some of them are quite far down a fjord, so if I need to go there, it's going to take me out of my way a little bit. So I won't go to those ones unless I feel I have to. But other than that, I should be. I'll be popping in to a settlement probably twice a week, I should think.
Those settlements, will you be able to buy, if you need more fuel or you need, electricity, or, will there be a corner shop there, or are you going to eat off the land the entire trip?
Yeah, the whole trip is eating off the land, so it'll be fish or buying from hunters. I'll have a rifle with me for the bears, but I won't be aiming to shoot any seal. But there'll be hunters all the time go out there. And one of the scientists on the microbiome project is based in Nuuk University. She's gone on TV in Greenland to say this Englishman will be kayaking up the coast. These are the rough kind of dates he'll be up there, looking to eat an Inuit diet. So if you see him and he's making gestures with his fingers to his mouth, there's a good likelihood he'll need some food. So I'll be taking cash up as well. But there's hunters everywhere. Yeah, and I suspect I'll be sick of cod by the time I get to the end of it.
and being in your kayak for 5 or 8 or 10 hours, like some people listen to podcasts or audiobooks or music. Some people I know they don't listen to anything. How will you keep occupied, paddling every day for 100 days?
I'll have an audiobook. It's going to be it's a question of power, basically. So I've got 2 or 3 really big power packs that I'll take with me, and a little solar panel array that kind of unfolds and goes on the back of the kayak. And the last 3 years, touch wood, when I've been there, during the summer months, it's been pretty sunny. But also because of the scientific project, I've got settlements where I'll have a contact where I'll be sending my samples back to Nuuk University. And also the plan is I'll give them my dead batteries, swap it for fresh ones, and then they'll charge up the dead batteries and then mail it on to the next contact, which will be 2 weeks up the coast. So I'm hoping between that and the power packs that I have, I'll be able to keep the power going.
It's funny, I know on backpacking trips, sometimes if it's a really tough day, just being able to listen to a podcast or listen to a book or even a song, it's amazing just the power of that little thing after a tough day some days. Yeah. And when you're out on at sea or just kayaking, there's no roads in Greenland. Everything's connected either by boat or plane. But you very rarely see any of those outside the settlements, and it's so quiet. It's so still, and you go along, and I've been paddling along, singing at the top of my voice because there's no one around. You wouldn't dream of doing it, in civilization. But there's me, knocking out some opera songs and stuff. Just if anyone can see me, they'd assume I'd gone mad. What are the logistics for training for a trip like this? Is this something you spent all winter getting ready for?
I hit the gym 5 or 6 times a week, mostly on kind of torso and upper body. So I do a lot of the arm bike. You hold the pedals and you're just doing that for like an hour at a time, and do loads of low weight, high reps on dumbbells, different shoulder exercises, twists and sit ups. And now I've got the kayak my kayak's about 10 miles away. It's on the mouth of a river where it goes into the North Sea. So it's, if it's too rough to go out, I'll go down the river and just put an hour or so of hard paddling. And when it's okay, I'll just go out to sea and scoot up the coast of the North Sea a little bit. But it's, there isn't really a substitute for doing 5 or 6 hours a day. And, realistically, I can't do that. And try and earn money. It'd be nice if I had the luxury of being able to just train the whole time, but that doesn't happen. So I guess, my first 2 or 3 weeks, I've kind of allowed for it to be slightly harder while I get used to building up some serious hours in the kayak.
Back in the UK, you run Cedarwood Homestead, and can you maybe tell me a little bit about that project?
Yeah, me and my partner, Lucy, she grows heritage veg mostly for a big American seed company that have heirloom, organic, amazing seeds of long lost varieties. And we got this place only just over a year ago, actually. It's an acre and a half set in Suffolk, which is in the east of England. And it was derelict, and we've spent a good year building it, developing the land, and rebuilding the entire house. So we had a Channel 5 here did a documentary on us, because it was a kind of an aspirational type project, and we kept the house pretty much exactly as it was before, except for the falling down and rotten and goats living in it type thing. And I've built a root cellar, built a big Greenlandic cold smoker. We've got goats and chickens, and everything's organic. And we're trying to be as self-sufficient as we can. Again, harking back to my eat your environment, where it seems crazy to be flying avocados from Mexico to Europe, and then to Copenhagen, and then to Greenland, and then on smaller flights going up and down the coast. And then a lot of the settlements you can buy avocados or kiwi fruit. So that was a big, even though we do that here in England, obviously we have avocados which aren't grown here. They come almost the same distance, but in Greenland, it's so much more evident that they don't belong here. You look outside the window and it's ice or just barren rock and mountains. So it's been a real kind of crucible there for me anyway, as a chef, going, this is crazy that we're doing this. We don't need to eat avocados in Greenland. We don't need to eat them in England. If you're in Mexico, then great, and they're growing on your doorstep. But it seems crazy that you've got all this other food that's available, but we're still flying stuff halfway around the world, using fossil fuels. It's just crazy, and it's a difficult thing to wean ourselves off, because now we've become used to it, having 20 different varieties of apple in the supermarket, or strawberries out of season, or asparagus from Peru. And it's great to have that. But I think every time you buy something like that, you need to be aware of the journey it's made and say, hang on, instead of that asparagus, why don't you buy this broccoli that was grown like 10 miles away? It's crazy.
There's a movement here in Canada about 20 or 25 years ago. It was called the 100-mile diet. And basically, eat within 100 miles of where you live. And in summer, it's really easy. In winter, if you're on the coast, it's still really easy. It's a bit more difficult in the interior, because it gets pretty cold. But one thing that, a lot of people I talked to, back then, even now, they want to grow their own food. Everyone has a lawn, but they don't know like what's easy to grow. What are some easy first steps? You've done this with your Cedarwood Homestead. What are some suggestions you could make for someone who wants to, start the journey of maybe growing some of their own food? Are there certain vegetables that are really easy?
Yeah, the ones we have gluts of aren't necessarily the ones that you go, oh my God, great. Like pumpkins and courgettes and marrow, super easy. They grow everywhere. And even from one plant, you've got loads and loads and loads. Courgettes, as a chef, they're probably not the sexiest veg out there, but they're really easy. And there's some amazing different types of pumpkins and squash out there. They don't have to be the classic Halloween pumpkin. You get some really small ones. You get spaghetti squash, which when you cook it comes out like spaghetti. So they're really good. Tomatoes are amazing when you home grow them, instead of buying the pap that you buy in supermarkets that have been grown in heated greenhouses. So tomatoes are really good. And it's surprisingly easy to grow stuff in a really small space. So you don't have to have a big kind of homestead or even a big garden to do it. You've got vertical towers with with the grow lights and ultraviolet and all this kind of stuff now as well, which is pretty easy to grow stuff. And then you've got the speciality ones like aubergines and peppers, which are great if you can get it indoors underneath some glass or in a polytunnel. We've got a couple of polytunnels here. So it is pretty easy. The best thing, what we're trying to do here, we live in a really small village, is try and hook up with 4 or 5 other families or households and kind of pool your resources. So if one person grows courgettes, another person grows peppers, another person's got a polytunnel of tomatoes, and you barter. So you just swap, which is what we've done for tens of thousands of years. Again, harking back to that kind of common sense, and this is what humans have always done. Instead of just being it's me, I've got to grow it all in my garden. Just open up the net a little bit and talk to your neighbours and say, okay, this year you grow spuds, I'll grow some onions, and we're away, and we'll just swap. Which is something we need to do to connect more with the community, which goes hand in hand with eating what's in your environment and getting away from this fossil fuel, climate change, capitalist-based greed.
We get hundreds of tomatoes, and you plant them. You make sure if it doesn't rain in a week, you give them a little bit of water. But when you can pick your vegetables, I spent all my summers on a farm as a kid. Freshly picked vegetables or fruit, it's like nothing you ever have before. And when you can just go into your backyard and pick a courgette or take some tomatoes for a tomato salad, it's like eating candy. They're so good. But we've got used to eating stuff in the supermarket, which might have been picked 3 or 4 weeks ago. And tomatoes, they look good, but they have a bit of tomato flavor. But the only problem is you have too many. So then you make friends with your neighbors and your family by giving them, a few pounds or a box of tomatoes. They think, who are you?
Yeah. And so it's also preserving them as well. I've been canning a lot this year, which isn't a thing that's big in England for some reason, but in the States and I guess Canada, it's quite a big thing amongst homesteaders and farms. If you've got a glut of tomatoes, just boil them down to a passata, run it through a moody sieve, and then can it, a pressure can, and they can you don't have to pay money for refrigeration or freeze them. Just have it in a jar on the shelf and tap into it whenever you want. We got loads of jars of tomato. We had so many, it was ridiculous. But we're cracking on through it now, which is great. Otherwise, it would just what are you going to do? You can't eat that many tomatoes in one go before they go off. So you either have to get rid of them to neighbours, or as animal feed, or try and preserve it somehow.
Our goal for this summer coming up is we want to try fermenting more and pickling more, because I love pickled things, but for me it was always a black box. So I've started just pickling onions. That's easy, but I'm always asking people I know are into it, like, how do you do that? How do you do this? And so that's kind of the next goal is, because as you said, my grandmother, when she moved to Canada, they lived in a sod hut on the prairies, a house made of sod. And in her basement, she had just a wall of everything was pickled or jarred. And, trying to go back to there, because we have so much produce in, July, August, and early September. And, they give it away. And then come October, it's all done. The first frost is here, and everyone's going back to the supermarket.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I don't know whether it was actually because of Ukraine and Russia or the energy crisis, but suddenly, for the first time in probably a generation, the food security has been threatened as well. So suddenly, supermarkets haven't quite got as much food, or sometimes they haven't got any potatoes or onions in. And Brexit didn't help as well. Idiots. But that's another reason why you should be growing your own stuff, and get a good store of passata and cooked off courgette, just in case you're really hungry.
I can't go without this one question. You're a chef, you're in the backcountry, or remote places cooking. What are some of your favorite meals? If you have a few ingredients that you like making when you're out, on the kayak, or just away from home, something that people can do maybe if they're backpacking.
Mussels are pretty much a go-to. Mussels are great. When it's low tide and you just scoot in with your kayak, and you've got in Greenland, we had some massive mussels that must have been 20, 30 years old. But you pick those. Just you have a pan and loads of wet seaweed on top. which and they steam as they go, just open, and you eat it like that. It's great. And I nearly always have a little box of sea salt with me as well, just as a little chefy pinch to go with it. But the fish as well is brilliant, and yeah. A lot of the stuff I cook has been and will be in Greenland. So there's always this kind of seal fat as well. They have this thing called egenek, which is fermented seal fat, which tastes like a blue cheese. Yeah, but it's not. It's like this. It's like speck or lardo. It's amazing. But a little spoon of that in a pan, and then you just caught a cod and you just cook it in that. Just simple like that. But it's, when you're sitting on a rock and you've got the fresh cod that was jumping about 20 minutes before. And you're looking out of the fjords and there's icebergs. Can't be beat. It's absolutely fantastic.
It sounds like you're going to eat really well on your kayak. I think of backpacking where you dehydrate some vegetables, you got some dried pasta or something, and you're trying to make something taste good. In your case, you're going to have some delicious meals with the fresh seafood.
Yeah, there's going to be some good stuff out there. Yeah.
Mike, this has been incredible. Not only hearing about your trip, but also all the learning you're going to do. A lot of trips, it's just about the trip, but in your case, tackling microplastics, looking at the gut biome. It's just really, really fascinating. I want to say thanks for being on the podcast today and sharing all this with us.
Absolute pleasure. Perhaps I'll come back on again afterwards.
If people want to follow along and follow your trip, where can they find you?
I'll be posting most of the time from Greenland as well. Instagram will be the go-to one, I guess. Mike Keen Cooks. Just stick it in there, it should pop up. And I'll have a live a tracker on me as well, which will be marking my progress on a map on my website, which is mikekeen.co, just .co at the end there. So they're the main two. I'll also be posting stuff on YouTube. I think it's Mike Keen Cooks as well. Just type in Mike Keen and you've got some weird guy with a rotten bit of seal or a horrible looking bird. That would be me.
I'll put links to all those in the show notes because I'll definitely want to follow along. This is such a cool expedition. And thanks everyone for listening in to this episode of the 10 Adventures podcast. We'll be back next week to explore the world and hear about more epic adventures. Listen to other episodes of the 10 Adventures podcast on Amazon Music at amazon.com/10adventures.